And thank you so much. And by the way, please do help me out with some questions and some comments. Your questions are always better than mine. Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim. Today is the first episode of our multi-part series where we'll be speaking with Polish organizations and leaders that are helping Ukrainian refugees and the displaced. Our series begins with OGDM, with the OGDM Foundation and the essential work they are doing to help Ukrainian mothers and children. And in particular, we're going to be talking with Kuba Lang, co-founder of From Border to Flat, or From Border to Apartment. And that foundation is providing amazing services. So Jakub, if you can come on and activate your camera, it would just be great to chat a little bit about what you're providing to various individuals who are. Can you put on your camera?
Hi, Mark. No, I think you have to do it.
Aha. Okay, a little bit of, let's see, ask to start video. How's that?
Now it's working. Perfect.
There you go. You look absolutely beautiful. Thank you for coming to us. Where are you located right now, Jakub?
So at the moment, I'm speaking from Poland, Warsaw, so the capital of Poland. And thank you very much for inviting me onto the show.
You know, I just heard your mayor, the mayor of Warsaw, and he has an amazing facility to take complicated issues and encapsulate them in civil society, very human terms. Could you talk a little bit about what you are experiencing in Warsaw? Because it is really amazing. You know, countries complain when there is a slight uptick comparatively to population in immigration and in refugee status. But you have basically, in Poland, you're absorbing 10% of your population, but overnight. So tell me a little bit about what the picture is like from Warsaw.
So maybe I would just start by saying that it's, and I'll put the government aside from our conversation, and it's going to be about the Poland as a nation. So something that I cannot stress enough, that every single Pole has done so much from the beginning of the invasion. And what's interesting that the support is continuing. And obviously, the government had a lot of challenges at the beginning, and then you can sort of narrow it down to cities like Warsaw. But all of the achievements, I would probably not give to mayors or kind of, to the president, but to every single volunteer that has done anything. So I would probably also stress that it's not about how much the city or OGDM as a nonprofit, how much we've done so far, but it's just amazing to see that you just talk to any one of your friends or extended friends, and then someone has done something in the past 3 months.
It really is impressive, and you are so right. There is a place for government action in civil society, of course. There is a place for various organizations, but it is the individual that has responded, that has created the organization. It is the mother with their own children who are worried about their own families. It is the father who has their own children and their own families. It is the elderly and the young who are responding in this really amazing and spontaneous way. Where do you think the source of that response is? Is it a self-identification with the problems that the Ukrainians face and an understanding that we too could be in this situation?
Absolutely, and I think you're totally right about that. And there is the historic aspect to that, because as you know, in 1939, we were kind of left alone as a country, and many generations obviously passed. And if you kind of live in a history told that we had to kind of make it on our own. then it's only natural that you step in any capacity you have if you see almost an identical situation with the horrific invasion, right? So so this is why I think it was a no-brainer for anyone. So you know, from essentially day one, there is a number of different convoys going immediately to the border, filled up with food, water, clothing, blankets, anything that it's needed at the border, or any reception point. And then you know, people are driving back with Ukrainian refugees. I did 5 trips on my own, and then I was taking more people than allowed in a car by the law. But you know, even then, people were kind of, let's say, closing eyes and knowing that we were doing it as a country, as a nation, for the right cause. And you'd be surprised that, you know, I would receive calls or make calls late at night saying that I have 7 refugees with me. Can I have a place for a day, for a night, or for a week? And you'd say, yeah, of course, they can stay in my place, even though, you know, sometimes it would be a full family with young kids going to school, but people would share essentially every square meter and food they have.
Well, and the thing that I think you're describing is that people are getting into their own personal cars, paying for gasoline, which is quite expensive, spontaneously moving to the border. Now, over time, that spontaneity has evolved into a little bit more organization. So let's talk a little bit about where you started. So we talked a little bit about that sort of spontaneous approach. Mm-hmm. And again, you bring people into your home that you do not know, right? You then open up your cupboard and see what blankets you have, what pillows you might have, how you can bed somebody down for the night, or you might have a friend, and then you sort of figure it out. But over time, you created an organization. So talk a little bit about that transformation from that spontaneity and how that worked with you driving to the border yourself, and where you are now, and what those intermediate steps were to create the organization that you are still evolving.
Sure. So maybe I'll just start with a short story. So essentially, it all started with a post that, you know, I'm going definitely on my own to the border. Who's joining me? Then we had 2 convoys from 2 cities, 19 cars altogether. And then all of a sudden, we started a movement, and we were definitely not the only people doing that. But to put things fast forward, we ended up with a group of 1.7 thousand volunteers mixing different services. So whether it was kind of, you know, allowing to people to stay at their flats, or driving to the border, or helping to coordinate all of the actions. So hence the name. So actually in Polish, it's od granicy do mieszkania. So it's from the border to the flat, or to the apartment. But as you rightly mentioned, you know, the wave of people crossing our border has significantly decreased over time. What's interesting is that more and more people are coming back, because everyone is hoping.
So you're having traffic in both directions now, whereas before it was flooding in one direction.
Absolutely. And, you know, everyone is hoping that the war will essentially end soon. And I can tell you that most of the people from our organization would have some kind of a business/financial background. And our approach to that, because me and my co-founders, we dropped what we were doing before. So essentially, this is a full-time gig for us. And something that we applied immediately is, I would say, a management consulting style of, first of all, understanding what is a challenge, then, you know, putting some hypotheses and testing with various deliverables with different projects that I'm going to quickly tell you about in a second. And we're seeing essentially where we can deliver the biggest impact.
So let's pause for a second there, because you're talking about the chaos of the early days, right? And the spontaneity of the early days. Now, what you're doing is you're going to your own bank account, you're taking your own money out, you're taking your own personal car, you're using your own resources. And of course, those resources are finite, right? So
Correct.
while you're responding, you're also running out of the wherewithal to respond yourself, including time. So you
Absolutely.
change your whole life in order to pursue the solution of this next problem. And it's a problem that continues, right? Because as long as people are continuing, as long as
Absolutely.
war is continuing, this will continue. So you go from that. So and then you talk about a management consulting approach. So how do you deconstruct the problem? How did you deconstruct the problem? And how do you start to solve this issue of time, personnel resources, money, and then the flow of individuals to some sort of service?
Sure. So starting with, that even it's not the inflow of refugees to Poland, because we're here to stay as a nonprofit. In fact, we are obviously a fully registered nonprofit in Poland. We're about to be a 501c3 in the US, because we have a number of pledges that we would like to then kind of put together behind our project to fuel the impact.
Funding and advocacy in the United States for your organization, people that you serve.
And I'll give you one good example how we put that approach behind the problem. So you can imagine that we were, and it's more of a logistical problem, but we at the kind of the peak of the number of people crossing the border, and kind of as a reminder, it was around -5-10 degrees, and people would be queuing in like 200-300 meter queues just to cross the border.
Right.
So the need was beyond immediate. So that's one thing. Then on the top of that, you would have a finite number of flats that are available for the people. And what we decided to do is to create 2 coordination centers at locations of the company that is hosting us. And it's a gaming company called Kingwin. And we're forever grateful that we could use their premises essentially and we're continuing to use to operate. And we would create a systematic process to increase, first of all, the number of people that are taking from the border, and also making sure that they're allocated to the best city or town as they wanted. Because you can think about kind of as a diagram that some people treated Poland as a kind of pit stop because they would have family and relatives, say in Germany. You would also have people who also treated Poland as a pit stop because they knew that they would like to establish their new lives elsewhere. So we would then coordinate work with different organizations from different cities, different countries, moving people, for instance, to Portugal. There are some cases with the UK or the US. And from the numbers point of view, if we're talking about kind of thousands of people, this is where it gets very sort of tedious and detailed to create a process that is repeatable and first and foremost scalable. And we wouldn't be able to do it with kind of your, I would say, standard approach, just kind of that there is a problem, because we then tried a number of different optimization processes. So almost like a process optimization.
Well, absolutely. And this is really important to understand, right? You're sequentially solving problems. You were talking initially about the fact that people were queuing hundreds and hundreds of meters long, hundreds of yards long, in the dire cold with very little protection. So you start solving that problem. Then when you move people into flats, into the border areas, those flats end up becoming saturated very quickly. So now you're moving westward through Poland and also to other destinations to relieve some of the resource constraints that you have in Poland. And the other thing that I think is really interesting here is that you're informed by Polish history. You're informed by the history not only in 1939 when the Russians took over Poland, but also the partitioning of Poland through history from the 1700s, the dissolution of the Polish-Lithuanian territories, and then this tradition of having Poland sort of carved up amongst great powers and then reestablishing its identity with 1,000 years of history. And you're actually responding in a way that the populace that is informed by this history is very sensitive to not having this kind of fate occur again. And meanwhile, you're solving logistical problems of moving people in and integrating and so on. Talk a little bit about the various programs that are now involved as you've solved each of those problems. And let's talk a little bit about the discrete services that you're providing and the organization that you require in order to provide those services.
Right, and just a quick comment that it was Nazi Germany invading us in 1939.
1939, I'm sorry, and then the after.
Absolutely, but then obviously we know the story. So just a quick thing. So in terms of the project, and I would just focus on these ones with the sort of biggest impact that we have. So we are creating a steady supply of medical supplies and medications that are later distributed to hospitals in Ukraine. And obviously, we always focus on the humanitarian aspect of that. So you can imagine that there is just unlimited supply needed for the military. And we're hoping that this is going to end very soon. And this is another program where we're actually involved with a number of different American organizations. I can certainly say that we're working with amazing person from the Shriners organization, Laura Kozlowski. And, we started collaborating on moving things from the US that are obviously legally not prescription needed, that we can move them to Poland and then onto the different routes. There is the kind of brain behind that operation. It's Austin Potter, who is the US lead of OGDM and the person that is going to drive our 501c3. This is something where we can put unlimited resources behind. Only because you can imagine that if you can sit comfortably on a stock of any supplies and distribute them rightly, they're in constant need. It could be that there is a hospital that, for instance, is overstocked for some time, but then all of a sudden, there is a hospital in the nearby area that needs similar equipment.
So you have a logistics operation optimization problem to do. You have a funding problem. You have a logistics operation to deal with. You have to move goods and products and services to the appropriate location, and you have a number of different initiatives. So let's just go through them. The first that you mentioned was the relocation. Right, the relocation initiative to try and get people to where they can find a home, where they can take better care of themselves, where they can rely more on their friends. You also talked about the hospital. I guess, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly.
Krzyweruk, yes. So there is a hospital in Krzyweruk. Exactly. Right. So this is southeast of Ukraine. And there is a number of different hospitals that we're essentially building a master list of and trying to have it updated as soon as possible. So whenever someone is traveling, because at the moment we were doing it more of a partisan way that, someone is essentially buying a luggage and then buying extra 3 or 4 boxes. We're now thinking about a more, I would say, cargo approach. So we are even trying to see whether we can get sponsors for empty legs in private jets. So sort of from New York to Warsaw, because then obviously the value of the things that would be moving via such a route is way more expensive than paying for the flight itself. But we're trying to, again, work with a kind of most agile approach.
And in the hospital in Krzyweruk, all they're doing is they're providing medical services to those who need it. So if somebody comes in and it's civilian, you treat those people. If somebody crosses the border and they happen to have been wounded from the fighting, those people are treated. So it's just what the Red Cross has always done. It's what medical organizations have always done. If somebody is in need, there's a service, and the supplies need to flow, because you cannot either give sanitary services or a surgical services or whatever without those supplies. And then you also have, there was this initiative which I thought was interesting, Rock for Ukraine. Now, Rock for Ukraine, the music and cultural side, it would not seem to be a service, but is it a service given the fact that we have people who need to come together and share? So talk a little bit about those
Sure.
services as well.
So with Rock for Ukraine, I mean, it sits on our website, and it's an initiative that we have been supporting, but it's actually not something that we ran or we invented.
Right,
it's
right.
Brian Allen, a fantastic person, and I think it's someone you'd probably would like to invite onto your show, because he's doing so much, and the therapy via music and everything that he has done so far it's something that would probably, I could talk hours and hours about the things that he delivered. However, if you think about our strategy, and starting sort of with the bottom and our older projects, it's almost like the hierarchy of needs. Okay, so it's the Maslow's pyramid, and since we were first addressing the physiological needs, we are now putting every project against the pyramid and seeing which level it is addressing, and our sort of OKR, or kind of the main KPI, is to move 100,000 people all the way from the bottom to the top of the pyramid. And something that kind of is my dream is that we'll have enough funding that one of the kids that we saved in the process will be, for instance, sent to Harvard for the MBA, like full sponsorship. But obviously, all the steps sort of, first of all, getting them food and shelter.
Base is the physical immediate need, right? For food,
exactly,
shelter,
exactly,
kinds of things. And then you get into the sustaining need, which is to create some measure of self-sufficiency. And eventually you feed the mind and the soul when you have a certain sense of security. And what you're saying is that you're not neglecting, even in the early days, you're not neglecting thinking along all these vectors, because you can't get any sense of normality unless you're thinking in those terms. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because you unpack this in a very systematic way. What is your background? Talk a little bit about how you and your team have been trained to that enables you to respond in this way. And
Sure.
Also, it's very clear through your references to business that you have a business background. Now, you're a business person working and dedicating yourself to a civil society cause. You will not get rich doing this. I
won't.
So talk a little bit about first your background, and then let's talk a little bit about your own personal views and your motivations.
Sure. When the invasion started, so I had been running a software house. So essentially, a tech business that either builds products for entrepreneurs, or there is this concept of body leasing. So, Polish software engineers are world class. So we would then have clients globally where we would essentially lease developers to join their existing product teams.
Right, so you would design software, you would be coding, you would be doing.
So myself, I'm not a software engineer. So the closest to my background, I would say probably that, I feel as an entrepreneur. And I just absolutely love coming up with ideas and then executing and kind of realizing them in real world.
But your teams would be coding. You would be basically taking people who had certain skills, and you would find clients, create the connection, and you developed a revenue model out of that.
Absolutely. And previously, I had a brief romance with the world of finance, so with investment banking and private equity. So this is where kind of, this concept of management consulting came closer, and this is why it was way easier to apply it in the current situation and at OGDM. And our little small vision, which obviously will take decades to deliver, but we would like to be considered as the class of McKinsey for humanitarian crises. And obviously for that we need to have top class people not only believing in the cause, but also with the I would say sufficient business aptitude to deliver all the projects and the ambitious projects that we have in the pipeline. And learning on the situation that is currently happening in Ukraine, and being a bordering country, it's the experience that we can later on apply anywhere else in the world, and we can put all the experience, expertise, and models and processes and apply them faster to what we have done with the current situation.
So Jakob, explain this to me. We have in this world economy, particularly in the more developed nations, have adopted this idea of selfishness, of let's go where the money is, let's take our expertise and invest it where we can personally and our families can earn the most.
Right.
And what you're saying is you want to actually instead take your expertise that you have laboriously developed and invest it in something where you can earn the least. Why would you do that?
Good question. But it's a very simple answer. I have never been so satisfied with the things that I'm doing, or I have been doing for the past 3 months, ever in my life. So, you can always increase revenue, you can grow EBITDA, you can increase margins, you can grow teams, you can execute new businesses, buy other businesses. But then, the smile of the face, if you pick someone from a queue with a small child, everything kind of, lost in their country, you kind of, drive to McDonald's, buy them food, buy them little magazines, and see smile on children's faces, it's nowhere near satisfying in terms of, oh wow, our business has grown at kind of 11 times in the past 3 years. It's great, and by the way, I'm still sort of involved in certain business activity that I'm advising or doing deals, but it's a kind of I would say 5 to 10% of the, as you can imagine, I'm not working 8 hours a day, right? So just to make it clear,
you can change a person's life forever, right? By a small act of kindness, and stacking those small acts of kindness upon kindness upon kindness. In a sense, what you're saying is your hierarchy of needs has undergone a shift, where you decided that what you need more than beyond a certain level of comfort for yourself, what you need more is comfort for other people, and a civil society that works for a broader set than just your own family and your own self. Is that?
I can tell you, because yes, and it's but having said that, it's a very interesting question, because we started from the idea of kind of being selfish and egoistic. But if you think through the concept of helping others, you're certainly then doing it because you're in a way teasing your ego, because you get out of helping others some kind of a level of, again, accomplishment, right? So I totally understand that it's a complete, let's say, paradigm shift from growing a business. But there is satisfaction that you can grow something at a very fast pace, deliver a lot of impact, and I would be lying to you that I'm not getting kind of any personal satisfaction, but on a different level than helping people. And I think a lot of people involved in nonprofits would probably agree with me.
Yeah, we don't have to be saints. We just have to convince ourselves that saintly acts is something that is so satisfying that we wouldn't want to forgo the experience, right? I mean, that's really the issue, is shifting our minds. We can selfishly decide that we feel good helping others and do more of that, right? Wouldn't that be a nice world?
Exactly. And then, there is this just one word that is driving, I guess, everyone at our organization, and I guess karma, you just apply the multiplier factor to it, and if I just think about the number of meetings and people I met throughout the last 3 months, and just the level of kindness and motivation to help others, it's kind of, we believe in something called the law of attraction. So we're just constantly attracting people, kind of doing not only good things for Ukraine, but obviously there are many other aspects that needs to be tackled. So we work with different organizations tackling different things. So it's not only if I can kind of go back to projects that we organize. Is it a good time? Can I do that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So the second most important project, apart from the let's call it kind of the hospitals in Ukraine, it's essentially helping the Ukrainian school called Materinka in Warsaw. So imagine that pre-war it was a school with 200 students. I visited the school today actually with one of the US donors, just to show around the place and where the money can potentially be spent, and what are the most basic needs, including even chairs, because there are old wooden chairs, not very comfy for 7-year-olds to sit. And all of a sudden you have a headmaster with 5 new locations and with 1,000 students and with another 1,000 on their waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked, did you have the precise numbers? He said, sorry, but I'm too busy kind of trying to make the end year happen, that I'm just going to worry over the summer school. And this is something that kind of pushed us to think about potentially the OGDM chain of schools. And we were starting with a proof of concept over the summer. And again, a very interesting aspect because of the situation with COVID. The vast majority of companies moved to the remote setup, and I'm sure you're experiencing the same in the US. You'd have a lot of empty offices, right. And actually, someone who sits on our supervisory board, Michael Kaczmarek, has kindly offered that, look, maybe potentially we can think about having one of the spaces, if there is going to be money for rent, etc., convert into a school. So that's something that, and then again, there is this word that probably describes best serendipity. Like there were two teachers from Kharkiv. They used to run a music school, and we bumped into each other in one of the meetings, and they're looking for a place. So we just thought, wow, it's a great occasion to join forces. And if that proof of concept works, again, we're not sure whether it's going to be that office, but I can tell you that we already had a number of different calls with different companies that are willing to give us their offices. We can then be, again, kind of, we'll learn over the summer how to do it. And then just so we start the regular classes, probably starting with classes 1 to 3 post-summer. And then they can follow not the Polish education system, but being pushed out of their own country. I don't see the necessity to be kind of tied up with the Polish curriculum, but they would be kind of taught whatever they would have been in Ukraine. And that way we're again minimizing the impact of the war, right? So,
and you're creating jobs for teachers who have been displaced.
Absolutely.
You're creating family cohesion. You're honoring another culture by the considerate way in which you are thinking about this problem. Jakob, what I'd like to do is I'd like to, and we can do this offline, we can talk about doing a series of reports on the initiatives that you and your partners are undertaking.
That would be great.
And let's make sure that these initiatives are documented, because not only is it going to be important to connect what you're doing to other supporters in the world, but also the experience that you have could be very informative for how we as a world can respond to this flood of refugees,
Sure.
which whether it's in Africa or whether it's in the Middle East, along the Syrian border, and so on. These kinds of issues are going to be with us for a very, very long time. I'd like to give you the last word. If you could summarize what we can all do to help and support you and to help and support others like you, what kind of counsel would you give us? How should we think of this and how should we behave? I know money is always an issue, but could you give us any kind of guidance in terms of how we can use our time productively for you?
Sure. So I would start that the best source of information in terms of how people can help OGDM, remembering that, you know, our kind of true north KPI is helping over 100,000 Ukrainian kids and mothers.
Very concrete. By the way, I love the fact that you have a metric and an accountability sense where you will measure your success in terms of impact on others, concrete impact on others. It's not theoretical for you, is it?
It's something that, you know, it's the starting number. It is a bit crazy and it's challenging to kind of, you know, go against, but then if we can help 100,000, then we can help 1 million, and then we're not that far off, kind of, you know, to be involved on the other side. But going back to your initial question, so first of all, I would like to invite everyone to visit our website, www.ogdm.org. We're actually releasing a new website with more information on our project. And there are 4 ways that people can help. And it's not helping us, it's helping Ukrainians. Something apart from fundraising, because I'm putting that aside, because as you mentioned, money is always important, but there are other ways. We definitely need more people on board. So I'm very happy to kind of, you know, leave my email address, which is kuba.lang@ogdm.org. And, you know, we would have a number of volunteers flying from the US and being involved, whether it's hands-on helping at a train station, handing out food, or getting more operational with some of our projects. So visiting Poland, if you can do something cool over the summer, you're more than welcome, and we're going to be the best host possible. Secondly, if it's going to be, I would say, too time consuming to fly to Poland, I'm sure that there are ways of getting people involved sort of, you know, in a remote basis. And as I mentioned, we're growing our presence in the US, and our American team will definitely have, and we already have enough in the backlog to get help with. And something that we have seen as a very, very, I would say, successful and efficient way of helping is striking corporate deals. So if you think about, or if you run or you operate in a business that can send any material donations, whether it's, for instance, textbooks for kids, or whether it's, you know, any clothing, something that can be easily transported without the expiry date, then, you know, we can either distribute it in Poland or we can distribute it via different logistic routes in Ukraine. So just to summarize, you can come and volunteer with us in Poland. You can volunteer with us from the US or any other location. And then obviously you can help us with, apart from the financial donations, you can help us with some material donations of any kind.
Well, you've given us an agenda that we can follow, just extraordinarily useful. And you and I will talk right after the show as well,
Sure,
to continue to deepen this. Thank you so much for sharing the work that you're doing. Thank you for the work that you are doing on behalf of us all to ensure that civil society is strong, that people can actually live free, prosperous, joyous lives. Jakob Lang, please thank your people, your partners, your boards, your funders, and even those that you help and are in turn helping others. I mean, you are an example to us all. Co-founder for the organization OGDM, or translated from border to apartment or flat. Jakob Lang, thank you so much for your help and for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Last thing, Slava Ukraini, and I hope that this is going to end soon.
I hope that it is, but I think we have to gird ourselves for a long stalemate. And I think that we have to, as you say, we have to stay focused on support, because only through that do we end up with the world that we want. It's how we invest our time and our money that
Absolutely.
gives us the future. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very